Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to look at Standard 5.3a, which is Estimating Solutions. So on this lesson you're going to be doing a lot of estimation, and you'll need to be looking for words like estimate or approximately. Okay, these are all words that tell you you're going to round or find the closest answer. Another one might be about how much. Okay, so these are all words that tell you that you're going to be rounding, which is always pretty nice because it makes your work a lot less. So let's look at some problems and we'll look for those words. So number one, Luke has two horses named Sally and Rose. Sally eats about 11 2/5 pounds of food every day. Rose eats about 2 3/4 times as much food as Sally. Approximately, there's our word, how much total pounds of food do Sally and Rose eat each day? Okay, so Sally eats 11 2/5 and Rose 2 3/4 times as much. So there's our key word times. Tells us we're going to be multiplying along with this word total. Total is another word. It can be multiply or add. But since we've got the times in there, we're going to be multiplying. So we just need to round these numbers, okay, because those would be pretty hard to multiply. So I'm going to try to think about on fractions whether they round closer to 1/2 or do they round closer to 1/2. So 2/5. Okay, 2/5. What do we think? Is it closer to 1/2 or is it closer to 1/2? Well, I know that 5/5, okay, 5/5 is 1/2, and I've only got 2/5. So I'm thinking that this is probably closer to 1/2. So I'm going to say 11 and maybe 1/2. Okay. Now 2 3/4. Let's look at the fraction 3/4. Okay, so I'm going to erase 2/5 and we'll look at the fraction 3/4 now. So 3/4. And I know 4/4 is 1/2. Okay, and 3, now that's pretty close to 4. So I'm going to say 3/4 is closer to 1/2. So I had 2 3/4. So 2 plus 1/2 would be more like 3. Okay, so I'm going to look, because none of my answers have a fraction in them, I'm actually going to even just take this 11 or this 1/2 off. And I'm just going to say 11 times 3 is 33 pounds. And there's my answer right there. So I was able to round those fractions by looking to see is it closer to 1/2 or 1/2, and then multiplying just the whole numbers. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's look at number 5. So number 5 says, Midge held the high school or school high jump record for 344 weeks. Which is the best estimate of the number of years Midge held the record? Okay, so I've got weeks and I've got years. So I have to change these weeks to years. So take a look on your math chart and let's see how many weeks are in a year. Okay, our math chart tells us that 1 year equals 52 weeks. Okay, so I have weeks, so this is small, a small number, small amount, going to years, which is big. So I know when I go small to big, I divide. Okay, or little to big, I divide. Now 344 divided by 52 Oh, that's kind of hard to do. I'd like to get that to easier numbers. So what would 52 be closer to? Round to. Right, we could make that just 50. Okay. Now 344, is that closer to 300 or closer to 350? Yeah, it's closer to 350. Okay. So that's quite a bit easier to divide. 50. So I'm going to look up here times my years and my answers. And how many times do you think 50 is going to go into 350? 1 time? 3 times? 5 times? 7 times? Okay, think about that just a minute. 50 times what is 350? Or you can go ahead and divide it. Okay, last one that we're going to look at today is number 6. And number 6 says the 22 students in Mrs. Sorensen's class bought a Valentine present for their teacher. They purchased 2 dozen roses for $22.95 per dozen and a box of chocolates for $13.45. They agreed to split the cost equally. What is the best estimate of the amount each student paid? Okay, so I'm seeing some division words in here. Split, equally, each in the question. That tells me that at some point I'm going to be dividing. But I need to figure out how much they spent for their present. Okay, so the roses are $22.95 per dozen, and they bought 2 dozen. Now I want to round that, and I'm going to say $22.95 was closer to $23. So here's for 1 dozen, but they bought 2 dozen. Okay. Then they also bought a box of chocolates for $13.45. So what do you think? Is that closer to $13 or closer to $14? Right, that's closer to $13. So they also bought a box of chocolates. So let's add that up to see how much they spent on their Valentine's Day present. Okay, 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 more is 5, so about $59. And it says that 22 of them split that equally. So that's dividing 59 by 22. Yuck. That is not easy to do. So I want to round these numbers to make them more compatible, to make them easier to use. So 59 would probably bump up to 60. Okay, about 60 bucks. And 22, well, that would round down to 20. Okay, so now it's 60 divided by 20. That's a lot easier to do in our head. Okay, so you go ahead and finish up that problem. And that's all for today.